A very warm welcome. I am standing in for Tom today because he's in Vienna, we believe. And if you don't know me, I'm Chris Bridgman. I'm the development producer for Cumbria Arts and Culture Network. And this morning we are going to be learning about Artist Spare Rooms, which is an Eden Arts project up in Penrith. We'll be hearing from Kate Giergiel from the Westmorland and Furness Authority about a grant scheme with some fairly substantial amounts of money available. And we'll be hearing from Helen Clues about a festival of creativity and art, which takes place in Keswick towards the end of August. So lots of goodies. Very good to see you all. I will aim to maintain Tom's iron tradition of finishing on the dot at 10:30, so we won't hang about. If you're new here, do pop a little message in chat, sort of say who you are and where you are. And Amy, who masquerades as Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, is steering the machinery and will provide technical backup. And hello, Stefan and R.L. Wilson and somebody else who's connected to all. Oh, Archie. Hello. Okay, but we'll start off up in Penrith with Joe Bramley-Wright, who is here representing Artgene, and to talk about their project, Artist Spare Rooms. Joe, sorry, what's your job title?
Yeah, it's Eden Arts, and it's I'm a project manager at Eden Arts, and I'm sort of leading on the artist residency, which we call the Artist Spare Room.
Great. Well, so I know you've currently got this running at the moment. It's the kind of the third iteration after a bit of a long hiatus due to pandemic issues. So when did it originally start?
Well, I was actually, after our quick chat this morning, I thought I better just check my facts. And I actually think it's the fourth round that we've done.
Oh.
It looks like we started, we had a go and sort of tested the water in, I think, 2015. So we opened it up to a handful of artists. I think we maybe only had about 4 or 5 in that first round. And then we've also repeated that in 2018. Early 2020, and then we've had a bit of a break, obviously due to COVID, but it was sort of late last year that we thought it would be a really good idea to reintroduce it, because some of the artists and creatives that we met through the previous residencies we still work with, and we're still in touch with, so it's a really good thing for both them and for Eden Arts as an organisation as well.
Splendid. We have some slides which give a flavour of the range of work that's gone on over the years. So I think Amy will drop those in. We're not necessarily going to talk specifically about individual things. So, but basically, what is the concept? And I mean, is there actually a spare room? Is that actually the spare room?
Yeah, there is a spare room. So we're based in the old fire station in Penrith. So it's a massive building. We're based here as our office, but we also have the old engine bay, which is we make available to any of the people that come and take up the residency, if they're wanting to practice any performances or well, anything really. But we have other rooms within the building, some of which are occupied by artists and other creatives, but we have one room in particular that we keep as our spare room, so we can offer that space to people, and then they have access to the rest of the building, us as a team, and any equipment that we might have through our other projects. So we run a couple of cinema projects, Picnic Cinema and Cine North, so we have a bit of technical equipment, and other bits and bobs. So we try and be as helpful and supportive as possible.
And what's the shape of these residences? It's a fixed period, presumably, and do people kind of, are they required to live in the spare room? How does the
Yeah,
residency work?
we've said between 1 and 2 weeks. We do provide accommodation with our director Adrian. He lives in Carlisle, so they have a space that they can stay. And we offer per diems as well. And then any travel expenses that might be incurred, we pay for those too. So there isn't we don't pay for them to be here, but we certainly support them and facilitate them in being here, and offer any other sort of expertise that we can as an organisation and individuals.
Right. So it's a great opportunity for an artist in whatever discipline. We'll talk a little bit in a moment about the incredibly wide spread that covers. But it's an opportunity to just kind of spend some focused time doing their thing rather than having to worry about kind of the day job or other distractions, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the feedback that we've had, that it's time that they can spend that is focused. We do offer interaction as much or as little as people want, so we can offer any like feedback, or so Charlie, who I'm hoping might have a chance to join us. I think I've just seen him come in actually, so I'm hoping he might join the Zoom. He's the person that's here with us at the moment. He gave us a scratch performance yesterday because he's a performer and clown, and he's working on a new show. So he's been here all week working on that, doing some writing, research, and then we sort of popped down and watched his new its show, or the point that it's at, and we offered him a little bit of feedback as like an audience essentially. So yeah.
So is there an expectation that there is a thing that kind of comes out of it at the end of the residency, or is it kind of very much that if you spend a week or 2 weeks kind of scratching your head and pondering ideas, that's absolutely fine?
Absolutely, yeah, no expectation whatsoever on our part. We're just keen to offer that space to develop work. If there are outcomes, fantastic. The only outcome we ask for as an organisation is that they do interact with us on some level. So that might be joining us for our team lunch on a Tuesday, or just showing us what they've been up to. And that they write a blog post for us for our website, so we can learn about what they've been doing, and share that as well. But we try to put no expectations on them in terms of outcomes. Yeah, that's not the purpose of it.
So people can actually look at blog posts from previous residents. That's available on your website if you wanted to have a.
Yeah, I'll pop our link in the chat after
Yeah.
we've spoken. But yeah, there's a handful of ones from previous creatives. So we've had a really, this is Charlie, this picture.
All right.
So this is what from one of his previous shows that he shared this image with us. But yeah, so yeah, there's a handful on there. There's I don't know if I mentioned we had an archaeologist come and join us for one of our residencies, who was also a writer, and he sort of had an interest in collecting items. He was called Gavin McGregor. There's a really interesting post on there that he did for us. And he came and he did an awful lot of walking. He'd walk from the base to loads of Neolithic sites in the area, and then reflect on that. He'd sort of come back to the spare room and then reflect on that. And there's a great blog post that he created when he was here. We've had a filmmaker who, I think we saw one of the slides earlier, and he projected some images onto some of the trees in Penrith, and of like a fair, that's the one. Thank you. And he actually he did this. He had a test run while he was here, and then he returned, and we had this as part of the winter droving as well. But we have a blog post from him that was Lucas Cow. And
Just
he's
explain for
actually,
anybody who doesn't know that winter droving is one of your big things, isn't it? Fantastic
yeah.
kind of winter festival thing.
Yeah, it's our annual town festival. It happens when the clocks change at the end of October. And it's a mixture of a market, street performers, traditional sort of country style games that we that we try and sort of include the community in, and then it culminates in a torchlit procession at the end of the day with some amazing lanterns that we've had made over the years. But we do try and incorporate as much like different stuff as possible. And Lucas came back with his fairy trail in the churchyard. But yeah, so little connections like that are fantastic. We've had visual artists, we've had musicians, we've had more sort of conceptual artists come through. This was a photographer, Kathy McGregor, who came to us, and she really engaged with the community. And again, she returned. She did some of the photography for the winter droving. But it allowed her space. She was sort of returning. She'd had a more sort of journalistic career with photography, but she wanted to return to her own sort of creative practice. So that was another really interesting residency that we had. She was great. Yeah.
And so currently, Charlie's with you. Is he coming towards the end of his period now?
Yes, it's his last day today.
Oh, right.
So he came on Sunday last week. He's just here for a week with us. But he's been wanting to develop this new piece called I think it was The Assistant. Yeah, The Assistant, about a clown who tries to get an office job. And he's been just working out the sort of the minutiae of that so he can develop that show.
Right. And you've got some other people lined up in this round, have you?
Yeah, we've got a really interesting bunch of people coming up. We do have a couple more performers who are sort of leaning towards that. We call it sort of carny, so that sort of sideshow, like spectacle sort of performance. Because we did specifically sort of say that we were interested in that in our call out. We would never say we're only interested in that, because obviously we want to hear what people's ideas are, and we're really open to whatever that might be. But we do have a couple more coming up that are interested in that side of things. We have a writer, Saskia McCracken, coming, who's working on a new book about animals that are sort of misrepresented. So she's going to focus on corvids while she's here, and do a bit of research around that and have some space to develop that writing. We've got a couple of musicians, one of them who's working on making music with a saw. He calls it the musical saw. So he sounds really interesting. There's sort of a really wide cross section of people. We have a local woman called Kit Hollings, who she swam the Eden from source to sea recently to sort of highlight the pollution, and she's coming to work on some poetry related to that. So yeah, a real mix of different disciplines and creatives.
And so you've got a set of artists lined up for this coming period through. I think it goes through till July, does it?
Yeah, so we did an open call out. The deadline was in February, with view to having residencies from April through to July. I think we've got 12 coming in. Some of them overlap because we quite like that sort of interaction that happens when we've got more than one person here. But we were more than likely we will do it again. So I was saying earlier that it is handy to sign up to our mailing list or just follow us on sort of Facebook. So we always do an open call, and then as a team we sift through the submissions, because I think we had about 80 expressions of interest this time round. So and some really strong, interesting ones as well. So it was quite tricky to whittle it down, but yeah, we've got a really strong group coming in.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm going to throw it open to questions if people have anything they'd like to ask further. But yes, obviously we will keep an eye, and the next time you do a call, obviously we would hope to publicise that through Cumbria Arts and Culture Network.
Brilliant.
So sign up to both newsletters. Why not? Yes. So is there, you talked a bit about how some of these have kind of led to longer term relationships between Eden Arts and the artists.
Yeah, specifically, so Gavin, we've recently been working on a project called Epona, which is looking at fell pony heritage and the sort of heritage of the T-Bay area. So that connection with Gavin and his expertise in archaeology. He now works for Archaeology Scotland, I believe. So we've kept that relationship going. So any expertise in that area, we've sought him. Lucas Cow, who I mentioned, he's actually coming back again to develop a new work, and he was part of the droving. The photographer Kathy, we kept up that relationship, and she provided some photography for our events as well. And certainly with this round, there's some really interesting performances that we will likely, hopefully engage with in our sort of droving and other, if we have any other events upcoming. But you never quite know, I think is worth saying as well. We sort of open the doors, and we're always, pleasantly surprised by the ideas that people will come up with, and that informs what we do. And we another thing that we do ask but that we don't impose is that they leave a mark. So that might be on us as a team or the building. And I think one of the slides showed a little zine that somebody created that we have here in the building. And that sort of that impact it continues after the residency, really. So it's often the case that we stay in touch and continue that relationship with the people that have been here.
Yeah, it sounds like a very sort of fertilizing process, both for the individual artists and for the organization. If people do have questions for Joe, do stick your hands up either physically or virtually, or pop a thing in chat. I just tell us a little bit more about Epona, because there's an exhibition coming up associated with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, this really exciting project. So essentially, it's come about through the idea of creating a new piece of land art. That would likely take the form of a giant fell pony on the side of a fell side. So this came about through Adrian, our director, and Tom Lloyd, who runs Fell Pony Adventures. But as part of that project, we felt it was really important to engage the local community. So recently, we've been in 13 schools in that area, that T-Bay area, so primaries and Appleby Grammar and Kirby Stephen Grammar, and we've been working on that whole idea around the fell ponies and their heritage and why they're so important now, but also the heritage of the area. So we've had Alex Jacob Whitworth, she was leading the artist, the sort of creative side. We've had Chloe Brownlee-Chapman leading on the heritage side, so she's a heritage expert and delivering a workshop around that. And Anya Phoenix of Tail Trails, she creates these beautiful illustrated maps. So she was leading on that sort of idea of place and like heritage and routing those workshops in each of the school's areas. So that they ran through from January to March, and we have a big display opening at Reg Ed as part of the first day of it is the 40 Farms event that they have on next Saturday, but it's going to introduce this idea of the big piece of land art and the heritage of that the area and what we've done in those workshops with the kids. But it's been really well received. I think the kids certainly have got an awful lot out of it, and the schools learning more about all of those things and engaging in with those workshop leaders. But we're having a talk as part of that event next Saturday at midday. I'll put this in the notes as well after I finish speaking, where Adrian and Tom will be introducing the whole idea and the concept and sort of gaining some feedback through Q&A at that event.
Okay. And I see Laura posted the link to Epona.
Oh, thank you.
Lovely.
I can't do two things at once, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. And I'm not seeing any other hands going up. Do visit the Eden Arts website where you can see blog posts from previous participants in spare rooms and discover all the other exciting things they're doing. Sorry, there is a hand. That's Donna. Hello, Donna. Unmute and speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will that exhibition still be up when we're there for Pennies and Pounds at Reg Ed?
Yes, so it's on until the end of July. So
Okay,
yeah,
oh, that's great.
definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yet another reason to come along to the big meet at Reg Ed on the 1st of May, which I hope everybody's aware of. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Joe, very much indeed.
Thank you
I'm
for
sorry
having
we
me.
haven't seen Charlie clowning. Perhaps he can come.
Yeah, if he
Come
pops
on.
up later, perhaps you can say hello to
Yes. Right, in his squeaky car or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So Kate Giergiel, who is joining us from disconcertingly sunny Herefordshire. She's actually on leave, but has very nobly agreed to join us to talk a bit about funding stream that Westmorland and Furness Unitary Authority is offering up. We have a bunch of slides about this, so we're not going to read them to you. We'll let you read them, but we'll talk through. Kate, if you come off mute and give us a little bit of background.
Thank you for the reminder about mute.
This is ultimately the money is UK SPF funding, is it not?
Yes, it is. Some of it is, and some of it is the Rural England Prosperity Fund as well. It's quite a confusing package of funding, but hopefully won't be confusing for the people applying to it. We're trying our best to make it as accessible and as straightforward as possible to apply.
It's a bunch of money from the government, which then local authorities kind of decide.
Yes, it's essentially post-Brexit. It's what replaced the ERDF and the LEADER and the other bits of funding that used to be European. It's now the UK SPF, but it has quite a familiar feel if you've ever applied for funding from those other streams. So yeah, so could I have the first slide, because I'm not going to talk to the slides, but it'll help me remember what I've got to cover. So basically, it's aimed at arts, culture, and heritage organisations in Westmorland and Furness Council area, and I would say, now I've had an interesting discussion today from someone I won't name, but it was from a sort of quite a kind of well-established sporting organisation who said, do we count as heritage because we've been there a long time? And I said, I'm sorry, it isn't. It's sort of in the traditional idea of what heritage would be. So that could be heritage railways, heritage sites, museums,
I guess.
Yeah, museums, etc. And obviously arts and culture is a little bit more straightforward. We've kept it quite we're saying it's aimed at not-for-profits, arts, culture and heritage organisations. We haven't really sort of nailed that down, and I think the key thing is that what they're doing is kind of creating vibrant places and communities. We recognise that there are all sorts of different setups for different organisations doing this sort of thing, some of which are more commercial, some of which are charities, some of which are CICs, etc. But it's basically it's aimed at people who are providing that community benefit of creating sort of making a place a better place to live, and also that it's aimed at organisations that may not be in a position to bid for larger grants. Now there is when you look into the criteria for this, or be upfront about it, there isn't that we're not inviting applications this time from MPOs, Arts Council MPOs. It's aimed at, we don't want to say smaller because that sounds a bit, it doesn't sound very nice to say, well, you're a smaller organisation, because the impact can be very great, but it's people who maybe haven't in the past been able to apply for these larger sums of funding, and I'll come on
that regular funding from the arts.
Yes, that regular funding, or and that sort of level. So we're sort of, so basically the grants are quite large. They're between 10,000 and 35,000 and they're available for capital and revenue projects across the whole of the Westmorland and Furness area. And as we say, that's where they're funded. Could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, so the key thing to remember, because obviously some of the people on this, many of the people on this call won't be from Westmorland and Furness council area. It's basically where you pay council tax or your business rates to. If you pay those to Westmorland and Furness council, then you're in. We've already said what
I can might be worth just clarifying the last bullet point there about the timescales, about outputs achieved by the end of March next year, and then outcomes by the following year. Just explain what those two terms
what that is. Yes. So outputs are what you're going to do, and outcomes effectively is the effect of what you've done. So if you say, right, we're going to I'm trying to think. Okay, so we're going to improve our toilet facilities and enable because we're trying to encourage increase more accessibility for our venue. So the toilet would have to be finished by 31st of March 2025. But if you're measuring the impact on your, say, visitor numbers as a result of this, then that the outcome will be March 2026. It's obviously, it depends on what your project is, but it's like the effect, the outcome is more the effect of what you're doing, and the output is what you're actually doing with the funding. It is a very, very tight turnaround for this grant. It's to do with the fact that the UK SPF and REPF kind of go in these sort of rounds, and we're coming towards the end of this current round of funding. So this is why the money has got to be spent quite quickly. So actually, giving the example of a toilet wasn't maybe the best one. I think if you're aiming to do a kind of capital project, we would say be thoughtful about what you're saying you're going to deliver, because you will have to deliver it within quite a short time frame. It could be that if you're looking at getting capital, it would be maybe buying equipment in or finishing something off rather than starting a big building project that requires permissions, etc. But we can come to how that's sorted out in a bit. Yeah.
So yes, you are quite constrained by the government's requirements about how this money is handled, aren't you?
I would say I don't want to sound as if I'm sort of biting the hand that feeds, but there are quite a few constrictions, and it's not. I'd like to say it's not Westmorland and Furness being difficult about it. It is a lot of the sort of requirements I'm talking about today will be things that are set by the funding itself. So
can I just clarify? It wouldn't be appropriate for an individual artist or practitioner to apply for this, would it? You'd have to be sort of a body of some sort.
It has to be a sort of an existing it has to be an existing organization basically to apply. However, I mean, if you had an artist who had an idea and wanted to collaborate with a body who was happy to apply on, and work with them, that would be fine, but just not an individual artist applying on their own for this. That I don't think that would be appropriate for this funding.
Okay.
So
and so there's also differences depending on where you fall within the Westmorland and Furness.
There is, and this will sound. I mean, I was loath to put these on because it does make it sound a lot more complicated than your average fund, because the funding comes from about 3 different sources, and it's been put together in one pot, and each of those 3 different sources want to deliver different things in different areas. But so essentially, if you came under the remit of Borough Council in the old system before Westmorland and Furness existed, so if you used to sort of be in that geographical area, these are the things that you need to hit. You obviously have to deliver demonstrate how your project will improve an arts cultural heritage asset or deliver an event, and you have to, and it has to increase visitor numbers or improve visitor or participant engagement numbers, and so that's for Barrow. And could you move on to the next slide, which is the and this is, it sounds slightly more complicated, but it's basically because there are different requirements for capital funding or revenue funding in what was the old Eden District Council area or South Lakeland District Council area. So as I won't read through this, you can read them yourself, and the stuff is available, I think, on the link that's on the CACM website. But it's worth bearing these things in mind. They're quite similar. You know, it's mainly to do with sort of increasing visitor numbers and participation. Obviously, the capital funding, we're looking for the capital funding for in these two areas, that we increase accessibility. Although that's quite a narrow thing, it's to do with increasing accessibility in terms of physical disability, so sort of increasing access by wheelchair or sort of those with mobility issues rather than other forms of accessibility. And we're also looking about the creation of permanent jobs. And it should be said that applicants don't have to hit each of these sort of criteria. Obviously, the more criteria you hit and the more you can deliver on them, the more likely you are to be funded, but you don't have to feel that you have to hit every single one to apply at all. And hopefully this will be a bit clearer if you read through the sort of the actual criteria. But it's worthwhile saying, in case people are put off and think, oh, I'm not going to create a job, therefore I'm not going to apply to this. So could I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is the key thing. It's the date. So and also I'll just describe a bit about how we're going to be running this. Because as you can see, we're looking at the criteria, it is quite a complicated thing. You know, it's like, we're in this area, you have to do this. If this area, you have to do this. We thought, well, you know, the first stage for people will be to put in an expression of interest. So they think, yeah, I vaguely think this will be a good thing. I've got an idea. I want to just test it out. And it's a very simple form. It's about side and a half of A4. Just ask for about 300 words overall, just to describe what your project would be, to give us an idea of what it is you're going to do. And we can then have a look through that and work out if you're essentially eligible for this, so that you don't have to go through the rigmarole of applying for the full, you know, filling out the full application form. So the deadline for that is 22nd of April. And I just say, just get something in, even if you're not sure, it doesn't matter. I'm not, you know, it's not committing you to anything. It's just worth being in it so that we can, you know, we can take to the next stage if it's the right for you. After this, I'm going to look through all these applications, notify if you're eligible, and then you'll get a sort of full application form, which will be appropriate for your area and what it is that you want to fund. So you're not having to worry about which one of these things do I fit into. You'll get an application form that's appropriate for where you are, basically. What we're doing with this is we're building in an element, and we're working with CACN to basically support people through this process a bit, because we're aware that if we're aiming for people who are not normally applying for larger amounts of grant funding, that this might be a bit of a sort of a departure, a bit of a new step. So we are offering applicant surgery sessions where applicants will be able to talk through their draft application form in the state that it's in, and just get a bit of feedback on what they're doing, and particularly support with the areas that maybe need a bit of work in order to get, you know, to sort of make a successful application. So that will happen during May, and then we're aiming for a full application deadline in June. And so probably notification for applicants, we haven't set the date yet, but notification whether applicants be successful will be July. So it would be from sort of July through to sort of the early part of 2025, when you would have to deliver your projects. So I think that's it. I'm not sure we've got another slide, actually. There might be yeah, that's just the contact details, but all of that I think is on the CACM website, so you can, it's quite a lot to write down now, but you can.
Yes, and I'm sure we can pop it in chat as well. It's very useful that Virginia Taylor is here, who's been able to answer some of the questions in the chat. But Chris Dennett, you asked, can we use as match funding for a community ownership fund bid for an arts and community venue? I think Virginia was suggesting that would be okay, and if it's not just individual arts, but would either Kate or Virginia like to speak to that?
So there's no requirement for match funding with this fund. It's 100% funding if you wish, but you can use it for match funding. The only thing I'd say is that you know, because of the tight time frame of this, it would probably be more suitable if you're using match funding for stuff that's where you're adding, this is the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and then you're good to go, not for projects that need more than 35k and are then going out to look for more funding, just because we don't have a lot of time with this and there's no flexibility in terms of delivery. The only other consideration is that this is subject to I'm just going to forget now, the I think it's MFA, so it's minimal financial and I think I want to say the last word, award, but it's basically what used to be the de minimis, which meant that you know that within a 3-year period you couldn't have over you can't have over £315,000 worth of public subsidy for a project. So you just have to be aware of that. If you're dealing with larger grants and you've already had a lot of public funding, then this is subject to that.
Minimal financial assistance.
That's it, assistance. Thank you. I just went completely blank.
Okay. Now, okay, Laura Harrison and Ian Clegg have got hands up. So, Laura, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, this is probably not very helpful for a lot of other people, but because I'm not overly familiar with this type of funding, presumably it was the government that set the fact that it's existing organisations only, just because it would be really nice to see something on a similar scale for new enterprise in this sort of field, actually. So something that allows to expand the diversity of what we've already got.
Right. Unfortunately, I think this is set for this one, but it's worth taking that on board. Yeah.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah. There may be other ways that the local authorities can find to support things, possibly within a kind of a broader business support rather than specifically cultural sector. I don't know. Yeah. Ian, do you want to come off mute?
Hi, I'm probably going to ask a question a lot of people are thinking, the individual versus organisation. As an individual, could you team up with an organisation such as an exhibition hall or something like that and say that this is what I want to work with, and actually be the prime mover from that point of view, or am I clutching at straws here?
I think the organisation that you teamed up with would be the accountable body for that funding. There is with this funding, possibly more so than other forms of funding, there is a real a kind of case that you set out to deliver certain outputs, and we always have to say that there's the possibility that the funding we take back if the outputs aren't delivered. That's quite a lot for an individual to take on, particularly if you're dealing with these sort of sums of money. So I think that that's partly why we're talking about organisations being the accountable body, being the people who are who are kind of responsible for this funding. They're far better positioned than an individual to do that. But I don't think there'll be any reason why, if an organisation was happy to work with you as a sort of collaborative thing, that couldn't happen. It would just be that the name on that application form and the accountable body would be the organisation and not the individual artist.
What if that body is already council funded?
I think it probably depends on how the funding's come through. I mean, if you want to drop me an email with the sort of, the query and who it is and where they get their funding from and the rest of it, it's probably easier thing to sort of pick through there rather than me sort of talking off the top of my head right now. I don't think it would necessarily preclude it, but we'll just have to have a chat about it, Ian, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's a general question, but obviously I'm being selfish from some of the people.
Not at all. Not at all. But I would say that potentially collaborative working would be fine. I think it would just be the name on the application, and the person who would be ultimately accountable for it would have to be an organisation, and they would obviously have to understand what they were letting themselves in for as well. But hopefully they would.
It sounds like we do need your help to fill these sort of things in. It sounds very institutional.
Well, we'll try and make it as easy as possible, or at least give people as much support as we can, even if we can't make it easy, if you see what I mean.
Okay. Cheers.
Laura's asked, is this likely to be repeated next year? Will there be another round of this?
I don't know at the moment whether there is. I haven't heard that there is. It's nothing in the pipeline as yet. Anything's possible, and I expect if there was another round of the UK SBF funding and this was successful, then possibly. But I really don't know at this point.
Wouldn't count on it. Get your bids in now, I think, rather than
Yes, yeah.
hold off. Virginia, yes. Oh, you come off mute, but I can't hear you. Maybe your mic's not working.
Can you hear me yet?
Oh, hello. Yes, I think that's come through.
Yeah, sorry, I trod on my headset. I wasn't sure whether it worked or not, and it doesn't. That's a pity. Just to clarify, sorry, Kate. This is this UK SPF round was 3 years, and we've already had 1 year. We're in the middle of the second year, and there's 1 year to go. So the answer really, Lorna, is no, not through this scheme. What the government does, or whatever government does about UK SPF, is a good question. One hopes that it's more generous and that the timescale is better, because we only heard about it halfway through the first year. Well, thanks a lot, you know. It's not this isn't everything. It's full of, you know, we wish it was better, but this fills in the former sort of, if you ever did ESF funding, you know, everything has to have a sort of social benefit. So the sort of it's not really geared at individual art practice, but art practice for the benefit of the place. So this is the best we could do, guys. I'm really sorry.
I think if there are no further questions at the moment, there are links there in chat, and you can contact Kate certainly to get some more. Oh, Donna, yes?
Sorry. Okay. Hi. It's slightly like Ian's question, but I think it's a little bit more clear cut, because the organisation I'm thinking of is not traditionally funded by Arts Council, but a few years ago it did have an Arts Council. You know, it has had, but it doesn't now have Arts Council funding, and it's not an NPO, you know. So would that be a clearer cut case of it would be acceptable to apply?
I would have thought
yes.
so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so you have 10 days to get your expression of interest in, and as Kate says, it's very light touch at that early stage.
Yeah.
And yes, CACN has been invited to support the process as well with those surgeries later on. So thank you very much, Kate and Virginia, for that. And let us now move on to Helen Clues, who is joining us from Spectre, I think you said. And you're going to tell us a bit about Factory, which is a little festival of arts, culture, practice and engagement. This is the third year I think this has been going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it started, this is the third one coming up. So yeah.
We've got some slides to go with this, if Amy could start running them. And this takes place in Keswick at what used to be the pencil factory.
Yeah, at the pencil factory. It's taking place in the packing hall, which is an amazing industrial building. So high ceiling, big, wide expanse with sort of supporting pillars throughout. And it's just got an amazing atmosphere. So when the first event, which I wasn't involved with, took place, it was actually within the factory building itself in much smaller rooms and quite split up. But last year, in my role working for Eden Valley Artistic Network, we went to view this space, and it was part of my role to organise this event. And I saw this packing hall and I just thought, oh my goodness, yeah, we need to be in there. That's much better, much more conducive to a really nice, creative, open, friendly atmosphere. So we set about organising it and drastically expanding it, because I think the first year we only had 12 or so participants. It was quite sort of small, but obviously on the back of COVID and the lockdowns and all the shenanigans. So we had much more opportunity to expand and make it a much bigger event last year, which we did. We had over 30 artists exhibiting and about 8-10 musicians playing throughout the weekend, refreshments, workshop area. And it was really successful. It was really great. It had an amazing atmosphere, and it ran over 3 days last year, Friday, Saturday and Sunday in August.
You're just doing 2 this year though, aren't you?
Yeah, we're just doing the 2 this year. We found the Friday wasn't that busy, and we felt that it would be better to condense it to the Saturday and the Sunday and use the Friday for setup. We also had the most atrocious weather last year in August. It absolutely poured all weekend. It was cold, but either side of the event, the weather was fabulous. But the beauty of this was that it was all under one roof, free entry to the public. You could bring your dogs in. We had a cafe area set up in the corner with Moon and Sixpence coffee, serving lovely coffee and cakes. And it was just a really nice place to chill for the weekend.
Endorsed by Rachel Price from Theatres by the Lake, who said I went and it was great.
Oh, lovely.
And there's opportunities for people to get for the visitors to get involved and get creative as well.
Yeah, so we ran a really great workshop program. Actually, we weren't sure what the uptake would be like, but quite often people come to these sort of events and think, oh, actually, I really want to try that, or you kind of get inspired. And so it was really nice to have the space to run the workshop program in the corner of the packing hall, so it all became one sort of event, and that sort of creative energy flowed across the space, and it was just so lovely. We had a little area for the younger visitors as well, so if they felt inspired, they could literally just dive in. We had materials and stuff that was all free for everybody just to dig into and feel inspired. The workshop area was charged per person by each individual artist, so everybody benefited, and we had a full program. Every place more or less sold. Yeah,
there's a bit of felting going on there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we had felting, we had fused glass, we had life drawing, we had drawing workshops, we had collage, mixed media workshops. Yeah, we had all sorts going on from memory. Yeah, it was really good.
Just talking about money for a moment. So if people, the participants, and we'll talk a little bit, your as an open call out for people who'd like to take part as artists in this. So they pay a participation fee if they're selected, but then presumably they can generate income by selling through the
so you pay £100 per person, per stall, per pitch. They're quite a generous pitch as well, and you're provided with the table, the screens that surround you and sort of section you off from the other artists. So there's a really flexible display area, so you've got your table area and your screens as well, and you pay £100 for the 2 days. We've tried to keep it as affordable as possible to encourage as many artists to join us. And it's £100 for the 2 days. You come along, you set your stall up, and you run your pitch, and you sell. Yeah, and you can use it to market your business basically.
Yeah, and develop relationships with customers. If you're delivering a workshop, that's do you basically work on the takings go directly to the artist, or is there a set fee for the whoever's tutoring, as it were?
The money goes directly to the artist. So we can work with them with that, and we can help to take the bookings as long as we so as part of the application process, we ask what they can provide on what days, at what cost, and how many people they're happy to take. And the workshops normally take about 8 people. So we have room for sort of 8 people around a large work table, and there's a workspace there for you to work in. So we negotiate with each artist on the workshops.
Okay. And obviously heavily emphasizing visual arts, some nice ceramics there, but you mentioned there's also music in the course of the weekend.
So we felt that we wanted, it's a lovely big space, the acoustics in there are really interesting, and so last year we had a range of acoustic and semi-acoustic performers doing their little bit throughout the weekend. So we had little sets sort of set up, and that worked really well. And that just adds another dimension to the event. So it's all kind of, it is sort of sectioned off, but it's all still one big sort of festival feel. And that's that. The music sort of section was set up near the refreshment end of the building, so you had places to sit and linger and have a coffee and listen to the musicians, and yeah.
And what's the financial deal for musicians? Do they get paid, or do they do it for the love of it, or what's the...
No, it is paid. Yeah. So we have money to pay musicians. We have a gentleman who's sort of sorting out the set list and the participants for the music side of things as well. So if there are musicians interested in getting in touch that would like to do a small set, then yeah. I've just had a message come up. What date is this year's event? So it's running from the 17th and the 18th of August. So that's the Saturday and Sunday, from 10 till 4. And the setup day is the 16th. So you come along from midday on the Friday to set up and find your pitch and display your wares. And then we sort of open to the public on the 10th. We're hoping to work with Keswick Mountain Rescue as well, with a charity type connection there, looking for donations from the public, because it's free entry, but we're hoping to have a bucket on the door for Keswick Mountain Rescue as well.
You've got some funding for this, presumably, if you're able to pay for musicians and...
Well, it was fully funded by Evan last year, but it was a non-profit making. It's always been a non-profit making sort of exercise. It's just to create something, and a platform for artists to work together. This year we've had some funding, but it's self-funding this year. So we've had a little bit of support from Evan with regard to money for musicians, and a little bit of marketing money. But we've had a lot more interest this year. The event is definitely growing, and we'll be a lot more self-sufficient this year.
And there will be coffee and cake.
There will be coffee and cake, the best coffee and cake.
There's a question about how much will you charge for the sales commission apart from the participation fee?
There's no commission charge. It's just purely the £100 to have your pitch for the weekend and come along.
Marvelous. There is the link to your Facebook page, and there's a link from the Facebook page to the application form.
So just contact us through Facebook at the moment. There's a WhatsApp link there as well for you to WhatsApp me directly on Facebook, and just drop us a message if you've got any questions. Or the deadline for applications is it was originally the 30th of April, but I think we're extending that by 1 week. So yeah.
Okay, gives you a couple of weeks after you've got your initial expression of interest into the Westmorland Furness.
And it is a curated event, so we are looking at applications and making sure that we have a level of quality, and to ensure that we're putting on a quality event. So yeah,
and maintaining a variety, I guess, across the...
absolutely, to give everybody a fair chance.
Okay. Sound lovely, and I hope the weather's kinder to you this year. Not too good though, because then people want to be out swimming and things.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
Has anybody got any questions they have for Helen, or anybody who experienced it in previous years who has a visitor's view? Sounds very lovely. Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you for having me.
There's links going up in the chat. Thank you very much, Amy. And she's also put in, Amy, do you want to just explain what the LA23 Net event is?
I'm just typing some further stuff in, which I'll put in a second with the date, 18th of April. It's basically a networking and creative arts event. It's kind of a bit of a mishmash. I think their tagline is kind of networking doesn't have to be boring, and there's going to be some creative workshops at the event. It's at Windermere Jetty, 18th of April on an evening. It's a paid event, but there is a discount offered, so it takes the ticket down to £10 from around about 50, so it's quite a bargain. The discount code is, I think, CACN10. I'll put that in chat as well. You might have noticed that the discount code didn't go out in the newsletter, but it did go out in an additional newsletter this week. But yeah, if you any problems booking or anything, just let us know.
Yeah. LA23 is essentially a kind of business networking thing, but they are keen to involve the cultural sector. It's an opportunity to rub shoulders with the non-cultural, not stigmatizing them like that. And just to flag up some other CACN events coming up imminently next week, there's the online basic fundraising training, which is on the Wednesday morning. Still a couple of places, I think, available on that if you're having to put in bids to support your activity and not totally confident about that. That's a brilliant place to start. And then there are going to be fundraising hubs, which are informal get-togethers to chew over matters of generating income, coming up on the 23rd and 24th in Ulverston and Carlisle, respectively. And the big meet, as we've touched on the 1st of May at Reg Ed, which is all about, again, about ways of generating income, with the lead speaker being Bernard Ross, who is a fantastically entertaining and inspiring and charismatic speaker and kind of world expert on getting money out of people, basically the psychology of what helps get people to want to give to you and support you in various ways, all sorts of various ways. Fascinating chap. We're very nearly at time. Has anybody got any events that are coming up over the weekend they want to flag up, or other exciting things in the cultural and heritage sector? Andrew?
I don't normally talk about myself, as you know, but tonight at Full of Noises in our building in Barrow Park, Peelview House, myself and the principal conductor of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic are being interviewed by Sandra in a sort of mashup that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, and I'm not quite sure what else. So we've each chosen 4 recordings that form part of our musical development and life, and we're going to talk about them. And we're very different people, sort of very different people. We're both called Andrew, so we've got something in common. It's £5 on the door, which includes drink and refreshments. Starts at 7:15, and we'll wrap up by 8 o'clock. I suspect we may stay on afterwards chatting, and you'd all be very welcome if you can make it.
And yes, Monique, I was about to invite you, and Gilly, I see you too. But I know at the other end of the area, pretty much in Keswick Theatre by the Lake this evening, there's Playback Theatre. Monique, just briefly tell us what that is.
Yes, well, been on the call last week, so I'm sure most of you will know by now. It's improvised theatre where we tell stories from people in the audience in a sort of stylized way. Manchester Playback Theatre is coming up because we in Cumbria are forming a group at the moment. So we wanted to have an example of what playback is. So if you are remotely curious, I think there's a few tickets left. We have a workshop tomorrow with Manchester Playback as well, but I think that's fully booked for now. But if you want to come and have a look, do come along to the Theatre by the Lake tonight.
Okay,
Thanks.
Gilly Jarman.
Hi, yes, we've got 2 things happening. This Sunday we have a Blue Jam Singers Day, and 2 people have just had to pull out. So we've got 2 spaces available. It's led by myself and Sarah Gray. We've worked together for years. We've taught each other. She's taught me classical music. I've taught her jazz. So she's going to be leading the morning. I'm going to be leading the afternoon. And we got about 20 singers so far from the northeast and across Cumbria. So there'll be food provided and an open mic at the end of the day. So it's in Blue Jam at our art space. And I'm just going to put...
That's in Penrith.
Yeah, I've just put the link to the Sum Up store where you can find out more information. And you'll also find information about an online Singing for Lung Health 4-week course that I'm starting on Tuesday as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to slap a poster on the advertising hoarding? Plenty going on. Thank you all very much. Normal service will be resumed next week. Tom will be back. I'm not sure, Amy, do we know what's on the menu for next week?
Let me just check, because Tom does keep the website up to date, but let me have a look. Has he put anything on? This should be interesting. We've got Disability Arts Online and Dan Ibbotson live from Venice. So tune in to see if that link is working. But he's done that before and it did work quite well last time. So
excellent. Right, I think we're pretty much dead on 10:30. It's been a rich and full programme. Thank you very much for the speakers, to Joe, to Helen, to Kate and Virginia. And thank you all for your attention and your contributions and questions. And go and have a reasonably sunny and culture-packed weekend. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.